This chapter is on business communication. In the last chapter, we talked about business ethics. This is a class that you can take at Holmes Community College, and it's just on business ethics. There's also a class that you can take that's called business communication. A lot of the topics in this class, you have the opportunity to take a whole class on. For example, we will talk about accounting. We've talked about business ethics, and we're about to talk about business communication. So all of these are courses that Holmes Community College offers, and I highly recommend each one of those. In this section, we're going to talk about communication skills and how you have an advantage if you can communicate. Communication is the transmission of information between a sender and a recipient. So communication is not just talking, it's also listening and seeking and understanding feedback from one's audience and responding appropriately. Communication can drastically boost your chances for success. It can also aid in influencing others. When you're trying to make a sale, you definitely want to be a good communicator. According to research, communication is the number one skill that employees are looking for. So if you are a good communicator, it really does open a lot of doors for you. When you're doing a job interview, they're going to be looking at your communication skills. Here are some terms that are in your textbook that I wanted to go over. So in the process of communication, the sender is going to send an encoded message through a communication channel. And the sender is going to decode the message and then send the feedback back to the sender. The presence of noise can distort the sender's message. Anything that interferes with the message you send to be different from the message your audience understands. It's not just noise when you think of noise like the TV. It's anything that gets in the way of the message. Sometimes noise can be the way you dress if it's distracting. That would be considered noise. The challenge to communication comes from all sorts of barriers, some of which you're not aware of, and some you are. These barriers are going to keep the audience from understanding the message, and it also keeps the sender from knowing that the message has been received as intended. Communication barriers can be physical, language, body language, cultural, perceptual, and organizational barriers. Intercultural communication is communication among people with different cultural backgrounds. Here are the barriers to communication. So as you can see, we have physical, language, body language, perceptual, organizational, and culture. All right, and we have physical barriers, and this could be any environmental or physical issue that's going to stand in the way of the audience. So some examples would be, have you ever been in a room where it's extremely cold or extremely hot? It's hard to pay attention when you're uncomfortable. And then another example is the way the chairs are sitting. It could be uncomfortable. So these are physical barriers. Next, you have language barriers. The use of different language, jargon, slang, or regional terms that someone you're speaking to may not understand. Then next you have body language. This could be the facial expressions, twitching, or any other non-verbal communication. You're going to set the tone as the speaker if you're the speaker, so you need to make sure that you make your listeners comfortable. Perceptual is just the point of view. So if you're the speaker, try to see where the listener is coming from or understand the listener's point of view. Next, you have organizational, and this is unspoken rules. For example, if your department can only communicate with each other and you can't communicate with other departments, well, how are you going to talk with others if that company has those formal barriers? The last one is cultural. So this could be, for example, if you're greeting somebody, well, we may greet with a handshake, but in another country, this may not be appropriate. So that's an example of a cultural barrier, how the speaker greets listeners. Other examples are interaction behaviors, socioeconomic hierarchy traditions, or even food. That really can affect communication as a speaker, the cultural differences. It's always important as a speaker to do your homework and make sure that you know your audience. Now we're going to move over to nonverbal communication. So the goal of nonverbal communication is to reinforce the meaning of your message as a speaker. For example, eye contact. Americans prefer eye contact with their listeners. So you know, and I talk to my children all the time about eye contact. I tell them when you're speaking to someone, make eye contact. This indicates integrity, trust, and respectful attention. The tone of voice. The speakers should moderate their tone as per the requirement of the situation. So it depends on what you're talking about as to what your tone is. Facial expressions is another one. The right facial expression is going to add value to your speech or to your communication. It also can show your emotions, level of agreement, as well as comprehension. And I want to mention here with facial expressions, make sure it matches what your message is. And in your notes it talks about if you're delivering bad news, the loss of a coworker. Well, of course, you're not going to be smiling here. Your tone of voice will be different than if you're delivering good news. Then the last one is your gesture and posture. This says a lot about your confidence. So you want to make sure that you're sitting up, your shoulders are back. And there are lots of YouTube videos out there about this, of how you should stand as a speaker you want to show confidence. Active listening is when the listener is really focused and has their complete attention on the speaker. And in your book, it says that people listen at about 125 to 250 words per minute, but they think at about 1,000 to 3,000 words per minute. So as the speaker is speaking, the listener is thinking 1,000 to 3,000 words per minute, while the speaker you're only hearing about 125 to 250 words, so your mind is racing. And I can definitely think about that. For example, when I'm in church and the preacher is speaking, I have a hard time listening because I'm thinking about what I need to do next. So a good way for me as a listener, because I feel like I am a weak listener, I try to take notes about what the speaker is saying, and that helps me listen a lot better. If I take notes about what the speaker's saying, that way my mind's not thinking about other things. I can focus more on the speaker. So here are some tips for our listeners, or to be a better listener. what you can do is while you're sitting there listening, try to sum up what the speaker's saying. Don't even glance at emails or text messages. That if you get on your phone, then you're going to be distracted. Take a few notes. That's what I do. I think that helps so much. Don't begin speaking the moment the person stops talking. Take a brief pause to indicate that you're absorbing the message. Listen, and that's something that I have a hard time when someone's speaking. I'm already thinking about what I'm going to say next. Try not to do that. Try to have your full attention on the speaker. Listen with both your ears and your eyes. So notice what the speaker's saying and does it match their body language. Don't get overly comfortable. If you're too relaxed, your mind may wander, or you may even fall asleep. Use nonverbal communication. Smile, nod, lean forward to show that you're listening. Do not pick up your phone or even look at your phone when you're listening. And this is what I had mentioned earlier. And phones are a big distraction. Really, they are. So, when you're trying to hear what a speaker's saying, don't get on your phone. Use verbal, and plus it's disrespectful to the speaker. Use verbal feedback and questions to indicate understanding. So you're saying that, or let me make sure I'm understanding you. So this is what you're saying. Don't interrupt or finish other people's sentences. This is such a great exhibit that you can apply to anything in your life. You need to be a good listener. And these are something that we all can do better on. So maybe print this slide out and really have it with you and try to practice these things this week.